Hey guys, welcome to another High Five, The Guardian's new weekly even Facebook Live series, where me, Kate Hutchinson, I get to go and hang out with very cool people, cooler than me, and ask them about 5 things that are rocking their world right now, whether it's art, books, film, fashion, records, whatever. And usually we infiltrate their workplaces, their studios, their homes, their living rooms. Last week we were at Joe Goddard from Hot Chicks living room. That was pretty fun. But for this week, we haven't quite, or today even, we haven't quite recreated one of your living rooms. We haven't sort of combined the sort of changing room style. Would you say that this was quite similar to your own sofa?
I have a leather sofa because I have 2 cats and my OCD is so out of control now that I have their hair on every piece of article of clothing and furniture and rug that I sold my couch and got a leather couch.
Excellent. Cats and hair, it is of course Tegan and Sara.
Nightmare.
Brilliant, but the format's very much the same. So you guys are going to be talking about your top 5 inspirations, is that right?
Yeah.
And as usual, or if you haven't seen this video series before, if you're watching, you can comment in the box below the video. Send your questions in for Tegan and Sara. Keep them short, snappy, clean, please, and I'll try and read out as many as possible because it's great when I don't have to talk or use my brain. Brilliant. So, inspiration number 1. Should we start with Katie Lang?
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
So it was sort of framed to us like that this would be sort of inspiration that was sort of under the banner of LGBTQ influences. So I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards Katie Lang off the top of my head, but when you immediately say to me like who was someone who had a big impact on you growing up, it was Katie Lang. She's from the same place that we grew up, in Alberta, in Canada, and she was just starting her career when we were children, and she was everywhere. She was, she was one of those people who had a remarkable voice and seemed to be able to do, she was sort of country punk, and then she was also doing, ballads, and she was working with Roy Orbison, and then she was also, getting a shave from Cindy Crawford, and she was gay, but it was like not even really talked about, but it was like she obviously was so gay. There was just a lot of things about her that made her a totally textured and interesting influence on us as kids.
And was she one of the only visible gay, like, famous people when you were growing up, when you were younger?
Kind of. I mean, I don't even know if we knew she was gay.
I don't think we knew she was gay.
I think maybe as about to be, to figure out that we were queer kids, we were certainly interested in her and her androgyny, and like seeing her on the cover of, was it Rolling Stone or
It was Vanity
Fair.
Where Cindy Crawford
yeah,
was
like to see the
showing.
image of 2 women, one that was very androgynous and one was so beautiful. I think it probably struck us as very interesting because I think even at that young age we were probably already starting to question or feel confusion around sexuality and gender because we were very tomboyish. We cut all our hair off, had one earring pierced, but then we had a mother who was very female and very beautiful and very fashion. So to see these 2 females colliding in that sense, I think it struck us. But I don't even know if we would have known she was gay. I'm not sure if we even knew what that was.
And was Constant Craving your shower song? It was mine.
This is the thing, is that I wouldn't necessarily say that she was a musical influence at that time because we were kids, like, so we were listening to...
It was playing in the house.
Yeah, my parents, like, it was like pop culture thing, like it was on the radio and stuff, but we were like a household that listened to, U2 and Kate Bush and the Eurythmics, and like my family were like more like pop, rock, like sort of like, sort of stranger stuff. Like Katie Lang was almost too mainstream in this weird way, but from a identity perspective, she was probably one of the first women I ever saw that didn't sort of fit into that kind of like boxed in, like, this is how women look, kind of box.
Yeah, absolutely. This is that bit in the interview where I get to do that thing
yeah.
that people in restaurants do,
Love
and
it,
it looks like they're Tindering and just
very natural.
This is normal now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting the comments through on my phone. Priya St C says, we're watching you from outside the roundhouse, which sounds quite stalkery.
Amazing. So you're sitting outside the venue. We'll see you
Brilliant.
tonight. We're really excited to play the Roundhouse, one of our favorite venues in the world. So
It's a great venue.
yeah.
Angie Magana says, see you in Dublin.
Oh, exciting. Very excited to go to Dublin.
Oh, hang on, but we've got a Roundhouse queue update. Linnéa Gröning says the entire queue outside the Roundhouse are watching you. So I guess they're all watching. That's
Hi,
brilliant.
everyone. We can't wait to get there. Tonight is really exciting because we have been touring with Rhea May, but we have a second support act joining us from Australia. Her name, well, today on the radio they said Alex Lahe. But I don't know if it's Leahy or Lahe. We're going to find out tonight. We're going to ask Alex. But we're so excited to play Roundhouse with both of these tremendous artists.
The British always find a unique way, probably a proper way to say everything.
It threw this Canadian off. I was like, what is her name?
Probably Lahi.
Lahi, yeah. Well, it's Australian, right? So you went, Lahi.
Excellent. Do you guys, how much of a hand do you have in sort of picking your support acts? Are you very active in finding people? In signing off on it all?
We only ever really
very bossy.
Yeah, we always have a list of people that we want to tour with. And sometimes, they're not available, so there'll be like a unique situation where we'll do like almost like a call out to people, like, who are you loving in the city? What are you interested in? Because a lot of times, our musical interests really vary. So, I would probably have like a weird, non-vocalist instrumentalist or something. And Tegan might have something that's like totally the opposite. So we also have to figure out a way to make sure that we're properly addressing both of our interests while also giving the audience something that is going to be of interest to them. So it's a unique kind of dynamic to figure out who's going to support us.
And what kind of music is Alex?
Alex she just writes like solid rock pop songs, in my opinion. Like she had a single that we heard while we were over touring in Australia last year. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't listen to a lot of rock music anymore. Anything that sort of has guitars has kind of like...
Is that out? Is that done for you now?
Well, probably for almost 10 years. I mean, I started started transitioning away from rock music in about 2008. And so it's pretty rare now something will grab me, though, like that's guitar driven and guitar based, and Alex is that artist right now where I just was like, oh my god, these are just like solid written songs.
Well, speaking of guitar, see what I'm doing here? Yeah. The second inspiration that I have on my list is somebody who's very well known for her incredible guitar playing. At the time it was quite different. Obviously lyrically she was out there. It was Ani DiFranco. Can you tell me about what kind of influence she had on you guys and your music? Because she did influence your music.
Oh yeah.
Your music.
Sarah and I had probably been playing guitar for a couple years at that point, writing songs in high school, and we were in this class called Broadcasting and Communication. So it was basically a very broad class where you would learn how to run recording equipment, you would learn how to make radio jingles, you would learn how to do basic editing on television. It was kind of like a trades class. And we had this really hilarious teacher who basically just let us all, do whatever we wanted in the class. And so we actually were lucky enough to have the class engineer a demo for us and, like things like that. So it was a really cool class. We really looked forward to it. And it was a class of really artistic people. And there was a girl in the class named Erin, and she was really obsessed with this artist, Ani DiFranco. And she also wrote and performed songs, this girl, Erin. And after Sarah and I started to play in the class and record music, she came over one day and she gave us a copy of, was it Dilate or
This is so
Plastic
interesting.
Little Castle?
I don't remember this at all. I would have, if you said, how did you discover Ani DiFranco, I would have been like, Carly and Elena. They gave us Living in Cliff.
Oh yeah, no. So Erin came over and she gave us a copy of either it was I think it was maybe Plastic Little Castle or Dilate.
Little Plastic Castle.
Sorry,
I
Little
don't
Plastic
even think you
Maybe
like
it was
Ani
Dilate.
DiFranco.
Stop it. So she brought over a disc, and I remember bringing it home and listening to it and being like completely and totally blown away. And then these other girls who Sarah just mentioned were like diehard fans. One of them, their dad ran or had a show on a college music station in Calgary, and it was like all of a sudden we had access to all this other music, and we brought home her live record, Living in Clip. And Sarah and I at that point, we were just really starting to write music, and so I think it definitely really affected the way we wrote and voiced our sort of
for me
personal lives.
For me it was the lyrics. Like it was, I felt that at that point we were very much into like what was popular in the 90s, like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and Hole and some of the Riot Girl stuff, and we also were friends with tons of people who were into like electronic music and hip hop. Like we listened to everything.
Epic mix.
Really like epic.
It's the 90s.
But when I heard Ani DiFranco, I remember thinking that there was something about her voice and her message, like the lyrics, that cut through immediately to me. I felt very realized. Like I thought, this woman is speaking in a way that I really relate to. And that she was, she was one of the only artists our age-ish that had ever at least to my knowledge, was self-identifying as bisexual, and that was revolutionary to me, because there had been a sort of era, I guess, of people who had suddenly come out like Elton John and George Michael and Katie Lang and Melissa Etheridge, but they were older than my parents, you know. So for me, I was like, oh, those people. But down here, like where we were, sort of like with all these younger people, there was sort of an absence of queerness. Yeah. And Ani was like the first person I remember being like, there was songs about women, and I was like, oh my god.
And we did listen to like a lot of the Riot Girl movement, like, you know, Pacific Northwest bands. Like I remember we listened to Tribe 8 and L7 and, you know, Slater Kenny, all these bands, but like there was something about Ani where it was truly about relationships that obviously really like resonated with us, because all the political bands, we were very political and we loved the political outspoken nature of the music they were making, but it was, you know, Ani hit us at a time where we were becoming romantic and interested in girls and writing music, so it was like a collision course for us to be finally met with this person who really helped us find our voice, you know.
I think Ani DiFranco, she's somebody that, you know, people absolutely love her for her strong lyrics, for her, you know, being openly bisexual, for all these things, of being strong, for not conforming to certain things. But also, she's very divisive, so perhaps since her heyday, a lot of people seem to be angry at her for these same things, for not being the person that they wanted her to be, for not being gay enough, for not being... Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people very outspoken, particularly about her. Right. And I wondered what you thought about that, and whether that's something that you kind of come up against as people wanting you to be everything to them.
Of course, you always run into the danger of people being disappointed in you when you get thrust into a position of representing a large group of people. All of a sudden, she was representing
every bisexual woman alive.
Yeah, all queer women, like lesbians, and I can remember, like women saying that they were really upset that she was that she would date men, and like it's hard to be a spokesperson for an entire group of people. LGBTQ people are like everybody else, and there's millions and millions and millions of people. None of us, not Ani, not Sarah, none of us can represent all queer people, you know.
I think that there's an interesting delineation too between when you're an artist, like, and I'm just gonna pull this, I always bring up Tom York, I don't know why, I just see Radiohead as being like, they're just so like invulnerable to criticisms, you know, like they just sort of get to be elastic and move through this world doing different things. And to me, it's like you can almost, the music is allowed to exist outside of the individual, like, you know, like it seems to me that a lot of art, especially when it's made by men, is it's allowed to be critiqued, and it can be very interesting, but it can also be totally you know, just somewhat compartmentalized from the actual person. Whereas I think with women, a lot of times we're sort of being judged on everything about, like, our art is being judged as if they were judging us personally. And so I think with Ani, it seems to me that it's like the fact that she was able to disclose these things that at the time were very, you know, were still very like big news. Like, to be a self-identified bisexual person, it was impossible to sort of separate her music from her bisexuality. And so I wonder sometimes if, I actually think Ani DiFranco was unfairly and sort of like, she kind of reminds me a bit of Lena Dunham, like where because she represented something, that a space that was so rarely represented, she faced so much criticism, and I think that was unfair.
Well, there was also so much focus on her fans, and there was so much focus on the way she looked. There was so much focus on the fact that she was, at the time, again, bisexual, lesbian, whatever, that's who her audience was. It was this very, I think, you know, aggressive division that happened, you know, where journalists and writers, even when she was like getting massive amounts of press and she was selling these huge shows out, there was still this tone to the press and the coverage of like, this is music for women who are queer. Or women, but definitely not men. And I think that there was just so much infighting because of that. And I think that she was underappreciated because of that.
You've touched on something really interesting there. I do want to say, just to everyone watching, that I am going to read out some of your questions in a minute. But
we hate your questions. Get rid of these questions.
I just don't want to break the flow. But what you said there about Ani DiFranco being seen as writing music for queer women or for women. Yeah. That's something that you guys are very conscious of with your songwriting, to try and make it as universal as possible. Is that right?
Well, I like pop music, and I think pop music is generally universal, you know? Like, I don't think that first of all, I think that the goal as a songwriter, certainly my goal as a songwriter, is to make you feel something. I want you to relate the music to your life. The truth is that you shouldn't be thinking about me and my life. If I'm writing a great song, it should instantly transport you to your life, to an experience you're having. If I've made the music too much about me, well, I've not done my job, you know? So, you know, I think that's why pop music is so interesting. Pop music has sounded different. Every decade it changes. But I think what it does is it brings together people from all different places, from all different experiences and backgrounds, and allows us to enjoy a moment, an experience together based on our own feelings that it's generating inside of us. I think with women, there is still this idea that if you're a woman, then you like music written by a woman for other women. And I think that certainly as queer artists, as queer women, we have often felt similar to how we see Ani DiFranco being maybe marginalized a bit, that journalists, especially male journalists, will write with this shock and awe, like, wow, I was at a Tegan and Sara concert, surrounded by women, really enjoying myself, like apologizing for it. And first of all, it's not true. Our audience is really diverse, and really there's a wide spectrum, and I think a lot of men really relate to the music we're writing. We're writing about women. I mean, there's lots for them to relate to. But I guess as a woman and as a queer woman, it has never occurred to me that the music that I like was written for me or not for me. I just assume all music is written for me. It's my job, you know, to listen and then associate it with my own life. I rarely think I couldn't care less what my favorite artists, who they're dating, or how many kids they have, or where they like to shop. You know, which is hilarious since we spend most of our lives talking about ourselves and our personal experiences and what we wrote about. And it's like, why does anyone care? This music's for you. Attach your feelings, attach your meaning. It's for you.
Well, you have lots of fans who definitely, you know, feel like it's for them, and they have lots of questions. So let's get stuck in. Okay, that was the most awkward segue ever.
You did good.
Okay, thanks. Brigid Seanin, sorry if I got that wrong, Brigid, said, what's the most important song for you to play right now? Any specific favourites, and why?
It's interesting because it's a real... It's the question we get asked most frequently is what songs we like of each other's, and like what songs we just like. And I'm
none of them.
I'm so interested to know why people... I wish I could get this answer from our fans sometimes, because I'm like, for me it changes. Like some nights I like playing all of the songs. Some nights I'm just like not going through the motions, but sometimes I'm not necessarily present in thinking about the individual songs. I'm just sort of in an experience of performance, and I don't really think about it in terms of like Tegan songs, and then I'm like, don't like this one, like this one, don't like this one. Like I don't categorize in the same way, and I wonder if it's because we are truly the performers and not necessarily listening. Like we're
right in that moment. You're not the writer, you're the performer.
Yeah, like I don't necessarily like if I have to pick a song that I'm really proud of or something, I can go like, oh, I really like I think Tegan's song "Call It Off" is really great. I think it stands up whether it's a full band or it's acoustic or it's fast or it's slow. I don't know. It's a great song, you know. But
I can answer this question. Okay. I'm really enjoying playing "Hang On to the Night."
Okay.
There we go. Done. Shall we move on to haircut?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So inspiration number 3, and I know this because I have my magic list on my phone, is Demi Moore's haircut in Ghost.
Yeah.
Big style.
Well, it's interesting because, again, when I got the questions and it was like, what are some LGBTQ inspired, like, how have you been inspired? For some reason, the first thing that jumped into my head was Demi Moore's haircut in Ghost, because I remember seeing her in that film and wanting to cut my hair like that, like as a little kid. Like I would have been like 10, maybe, or 11.
Very, very progressive to have such a short haircut.
Oh my God, I thought she gave me sort of funny feelings. Like it was a confusing moment, like in terms of like the intersection of like wanting to have a haircut like Demi Moore, also feeling kind of weird about do I want to be Patrick Swayze? Yeah. Like, do I want Patrick Swayze's hair? Like, do I want to get into pottery? Like, so many things happened for me, you know, in that moment. But yeah, it's funny because again, I mean, this sort of goes back to Katie Lang too, and in a way, Ani DiFranco. I think Tegan and I were immediately drawn to women who presented themselves in terms of their gender expression in a way that was not often the majority of women. And I think that, you know, because we were doing that on our own, you know, anytime we saw that represented in culture, we were drawn to it almost first, before we even knew what. Like imagine like
late 80s, early 90s, and it's like all women had permed hair,
big hair, shoulder
tiger makeup, shoulder pads, like leggings,
So she just described our mom.
Yeah, but like all women were like that. That was sort of like what was really cool. And while we could say like Cyndi Lauper and Madonna, our mom, all were really amazing and cool, it was a very gendered thing. It was very much like that's what females look like. And then there was all the things that men looked like, and we were just sort of in the middle as little kids, kind of confused. I didn't want to wear a dress. I didn't want long hair. I wanted short hair. And I think when we would identify these women who stood outside of what was normal or what was the usual, we were like immediately like,
yeah. And she rocked that hair so hard. And then when I was 29, I went to my hairdresser and I was like, I'm looking for
Demi.
Yeah, I was like, I brought in.
You can Google Sarah. I brought in Demi Moore hair.
But this is the thing is that I did it, and then some people were like, oh, they were more like they didn't recognize it as being Demi Moore hair, but they from Ghost they recognized it more like as like Linda Evangelista, like sort of like supermodels in the kind of like early 90s, which I was also fine with. But then I was walking down the street. I was living in New York City. And this man who was living on the street, which I actually thought this was really pretty, he had an amazing knowledge of like what was going on in the world. He was like, hey, Justin Bieber hair. And I was like, take it easy. It's Demi Moore or Linda Evangelista. I mean, I'll even go with Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber, but do not tell me that I have Justin Bieber hair. He has my hair.
The Justin...
He is copying lesbian hair. Like those are queer cuts that he has on his head.
Wasn't this was a meme, wasn't it? Was this a meme, some kind of
Maybe.
Tumblr explosion of
about Justin Bieber and lesbians' hair? Yes.
Right.
I think it's some kind of like, for a lot of queer identified people and sort of more masculine identified people, we sort of look to, I mean, my inspirations are generally my inspirations come from like the runways or like male models and stuff like that, and a lot of times they're sort of there's not a necessarily traditional masculinity there. Like they're sort of smooth and beautiful and sort of chiseled, and I'm like, yes, thank you. Like I'm not looking at like lumberjacks with like beards and like maple syrup. Like I'm looking at more like it's sort of a twist. Like maybe they're taking from feminine fashion and styles, and I'm taking from them, and it's sort of their filter of like that. And so when I look at Justin Bieber, all I see is like him trying to like cop lesbian style.
So it's like, it's the grey area in between.
It kind of is. Yeah.
We've got more questions come in.
Okay.
Ask a few. We'll be succinct.
Okay, great. We'll do a rapid fire round at the end.
Okay.
Just to sort of cram more in.
Okay.
Johnny Deanne would like to know how is working with Against Me.
Working with Against Me was awesome. So we discovered Against Me.
This doesn't sound like a succinct answer at
No.
all.
You're going back to some fire.
You're going back to like a history.
No. Okay. We're doing rapid fire at the end, but I will be succinct. We discovered Against Me very early on in Against Me's career, but it's just been incredible to see the progression and the transformation. And obviously, we were just overjoyed for Laura Jane when she came out as transgender and fully support. I actually just read Tranny, Laura Jane's book, sort of memoir about the first part of her life, and it's amazing. And I would highly recommend it. I think Laura writes some of the most hooky, melodic, awesome songs. I actually just watched their documentary that they put out a few years ago, We're Never Going Home, I think it's called, or something like that. Also really amazing. I feel really proud and really excited to be associated with them, and working with them was incredible. They were really wonderful. Really nice people.
Oh, that's pretty succinct.
That was good. That's like 1 minute. What if I'd been like, good? I liked it.
Yeah, you said it was
a wonderful time.
It was a positive experience. It was.
Well, I also wanted to give props to her new book because it is really good.
Yeah, definitely. Inspiration number 4. I don't have a very great kind of smooth way of getting into this.
Just throw it out there.
But it is super interesting, which is the Price of Salt.
Oh yeah.
Carol. So why is this important to you? Why did you pick this one in particular?
Well, so I sort of discovered Patricia Highsmith, who wrote The Price of Salt, sort of backwards. Like I didn't read any. I don't know. She's most famously probably known for writing The Talented Mr. Ripley and that sort of series of books that then became incredibly successful films. But I actually came to her through a biography that was written about her a couple of years ago, and it's fairly gossipy, and it sort of touches on the her secret life, which she was queer, and she had lots of romances with significant cultural and artistic figures of the time, and mostly in secret, but was sort of like palling around with the Gertrude Steins and the Picassos and Hemingways and that sort of thing. And then she was also like this famous writer for writing these very like machismo kind of like, well, not machismo, but like male kind of action books. But under a pen name, she wrote The Price of Salt, which was a lesbian, was lesbian characters who have a romance in a time when it was certainly frowned upon. And she talks in the afterword, in the book that I read anyways, about how in her entire career, the most successful books of hers were these Talented Mr. Ripley books, but that the book that she received the most letters about was The Price of Salt. And it was women expressing this sort of
gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude and happiness that they could find a book where there was a happy ending. And the book, not to blow it for people, but like no one dies. No one is like, you know...
And even the end, it's not even necessarily a happy ending. It just implies a happy ending, which is like...
You could imagine
which is basically the exact opposite, and to this day, of most lesbian literature, books, television. Lesbians always die or break up or go back to men, or like something terrible has to happen to them. We rarely tell positive stories, and this ended up being just like a really romantic.
And it's not without its tensions and conflicts. It's like, you know, it's actually a really interesting book. Some people say that it's actually what inspired Lolita. It was sort of came before that, and there's a sort of there's a road story involved, and a sort of like the Carol pursues, the older woman pursues a younger woman. I mean, there's all these things that sort of really inspired other writers, and it's sort of an interesting historical piece, but doesn't necessarily have the value in society because it was written about women. And so anyways, but Patricia Highsmith herself has been an interesting influence on me. And then to see that movie finally get made and have its sort of cultural significance acknowledged is really cool.
I mean, just going back to the death thing, but you touched on an interesting point there, which is, you know, there's some really shocking statistics about about representation and on screen. Less than, I'm just going to read it here. I just know this.
You didn't memorize this statistic before?
So less than 1% of TV characters are lesbian, and something like, well, they all die. They all die. So, I mean, what is that like as people that are looking for, you know, interesting TV characters, role models on screen, and all you're getting is...
Yeah. Look, I think we're living in a time where there's definitely more stories being told, and that's great. And I think that there's some really positive literature and books and TV shows about LGBTQ people that we can all feel are a triumph and feel excited about. And yeah, it's undeniable. There's a lot of really negative, sad, terrible things that happen to LGBTQ people on film and television, and I think that needs to change. And certainly we're working hard to push for better representation in the media. And when it comes to lesbian or bisexual characters or women from the LGBTQ community, we'd like to see more positive stories told. You know, not everyone is having a positive experience, but lots of women are. And I'll throw to a show that I think to this day stands up in good ways and bad ways, but The L Word. I remember when The L Word came out. First season's fantastic. You know, there were some seasons were better than others, but I can remember a lot of criticism from fellow LGBTQ people who were like, it's vapid, it's silly, it's not real. And I thought to myself, but don't we deserve that? Don't we just deserve a show like Melrose Place, but for lesbians? Like, can we not have a show where just a bunch of hot girls like make out, have relationships?
But there was so much more than that.
Well, this is the thing, is I was like, and then in later seasons they deal with cancer, they deal with adoption, they deal with race, they deal with transgender. Like, I just feel like all the issues that they covered, it just feels like an important show. And I thought to myself, well, as soon as it's over, there's going to be a million more, because they have proven that there are millions of LGBTQ people and their allies who would be interested in watching. And I'm actually shocked that there hasn't been more television made that way. And I would like to see not just a queer person on television. It would be nice, like we read this the other day, and you hear this said all the time. Wouldn't it be great if there was a show where there was a queer character, but then there was other queer characters for that person to talk to? Like, as a queer person, like, I am not the only queer person in my group of friends. I am not the only queer character in my life. And so there's lots of stuff that needs to happen and change. And I definitely think that groups like GLAAD are doing really great work pushing writers and studios and directors to stop killing off LGBTQ people. But the fact is that it's everywhere. We are the butt of every joke. And specifically, you know, we need to, again, highlight these positive stories and give kids and young people hope. Not just and then that person died, and then they died, and then they died.
You mentioned campaigning earlier. Is that part of the Tegan and Sara Foundation? Does that campaigning for representation on film, TV, book, whatever, feed into your new charity that you started?
I would love to see, the Tegan and Sara Foundation sort of touch a lot of different areas. I think as we're sort of in the opening months of like trying to figure out what would be where our work would be where we would sort of where we would be the most effective. We don't want to sort of step on anybody's toes, and there are a lot of really tremendous folks who are working in these areas already. I think we just want to make sure that we're kept abreast of like what's happening. Like, you know, it's not like we just came upon these figures the other day and said like, oh my god, they're killing off gays all the time on TV. Like, there are people really deeply invested in trying to change these figures. We think it's just, you know, if it's helpful for us to use our platform to also talk about it,
sure.
That would be great. I don't know if Tegan and I can like suddenly jump in and, you know, really change film and television.
For sure.
But what I think we can do, and we do often do this, is that, and what I just want to say one thing about the whole creating positive stories. Creating positive stories does not mean, you know, removing texture and dynamic and friction and ups and downs. Like, we want to see stories told about queer people that are representative of the stories that actually happen in real life. We want gay characters to be given the same sort of character development and story arcs. Those are the kinds of things that to me represent positivity. If I have to die, fine, but let me have a full life. Like, let me be more than just, a plot point for a straight person. And I think, you know, in a way, we're doing that with our music, and so, you know, if there's a way that we can do it with the foundation, we want to, but it might be more behind the scenes, like addressing some of the concerns and the issues and the inequities in LGBTQ lives might help get people into positions where then they can do really good things, whether it's media representation or, you know, whatever. So we're kind of in the stage where maybe we're not gonna develop the next lesbian drama, but hopefully we'll.
Somebody better hurry up and do it.
You're not about to be showrunners,
Yeah.
but maybe someone
We're
else
probably not
will.
going to be showrunners, but we definitely have the ear of a lot of great people, and we say it. We try to talk as much as we possibly can about these things.
So just to rewind to what the foundation is at its core, is it about developing awareness, funding services?
Yes.
I mean, I've read your website,
Yes.
but maybe you could explain a bit more about what the focus is.
I think the focus is going to be women and girls in the LGBTQ community, and representation is part of it. But we also see a major lack of funding and research when it comes to healthcare. And I think our long-term goal would be amassing an enormous amount of money to do proper research to ensure that, starting with North America, that LGBTQ women and girls can go to the doctor and deal with a culturally competent doctor who understands the specific needs for LGBTQ people. Cervical cancers are on the rise for women of color and LGBTQ people, etc. So, like, we have that in mind as well. And then, you know, there truly is just this, like, this urge on our part to, you know, in terms of mentoring and, you know, confidence building for young girls, LGBTQ girls. You know, we are working with a lot of different people right now and talking with a lot of people across many fields. So in the tech industry, in the healthcare industry, in media, like, where there isn't a lot of mentoring and there isn't a lot of representation of women in those positions. And so we're talking about some initiatives and some partnerships that would help with that sort of thing. So, you know, there's definitely
Lots of different layers and levels.
There's definitely
and
little,
avenues.
yeah, absolutely. And like Sarah said, there's already great organizations doing this work. A lot of them don't have the platform we do,
Sure.
or don't have access to the types of people we do. And I think what Sarah and I are seeing the foundation is a conduit.
Yeah.
To help some of these organizations who are doing great work access some of the money.
Yeah.
There's just people out there in the world who really want to give their money to a great organization, you know, who have an interest in helping to fund these programs, but they don't know how to get it where it needs to go. And I hope Sarah and I can be a part of helping them get that money where it needs to go.
Mm-hmm. We've got loads more questions. Going to do the rapid fire round. Also, the number 5 of the
Great.
top 5.
Okay.
But I do want to ask, what is it like to start getting involved in this activism in this big way in the age of Trump? He's not exactly the most LGBTQ friendly president.
You know, one thing, you know, we keep focusing on is that we started this foundation well before the election. And these are problems and inequities that exist and have always existed and would have probably continued to exist regardless of who was elected president of the United States. They're problems that we would see in the UK, that we see in France, in Germany, in Australia, New Zealand, all over the world. These are problems that are systemic, and they have a lot of times they have nothing to do with who's the president or who the people in power are. These are systemic issues that intersect with religion and cultural issues and social issues and gender inequities. And so I'm not trying to give Donald Trump a pass here. I just think that we're not getting focused on Trump right now. We're looking at a more grassroots level. Where can we do work outside of, some of the people that are looking to pass laws and anti-discrimination? We will give as much of our support to those people as possible, but we are looking for grassroots ways to address some of these problems. I can't take on Donald Trump as a Canadian citizen. I can't necessarily work in government or run for office, but I can do my best to work with the community that I love and that I see needs more support, and we can use our public profile to do that.
And the truth is that one of the initiatives that we're talking about with the foundation is there's been this incredible organization in the States called Emily's List. They just signed up 13,000 women to train and mentor to get into politics, and
to run for office.
And the idea of these kinds of initiatives starting to come up are really exciting, and I think Sarah and I were thinking in that way. Like, how do we take on Trump? It's less of that and more on how do we inspire people? How do we get young people to feel confident, feel good about themselves, and know that they can lead? Nobody stopped us from being who we are because we had a great family and we had great friends and we had a great support system, and we fought against misogyny and sexism and homophobia in our career. But we had every advantage a human being can have. What about people who don't? There are so many people in our community who are so marginalized and who are suffering so much, who are coming up against racism and poverty and homophobia, and we have to help those people. We have to elevate them. So for us, it's about focusing on helping those people and helping them rise up, and less about taking down the establishment. There's great people who are working on that, though, and we look forward to seeing that happen.
Such as Ellen Page.
Yeah, Ellen's a great. Ellen's
Ellen's
doing
great.
great work, and there's lots of pieces of the puzzle coming together right now, and a lot of people working together. But also, I think we are traveling around the world, and it's important to note the problem that's happening in the United States with the rise of white supremacy and the rise of nationalism and the rise of Islamophobia is not Donald Trump. That is the Republican Party, and that is happening around the world. That's happening in Germany and France, and Brexit. There's a lot of friction in the world right now when it comes to these issues, and Sarah and I we aren't becoming really America-centric here. Like, the day after the election in Canada, the Conservative Party was riled up. They're like, look, Donald Trump win, we can take back the House, Yeah. So I think we need to all be very aware that there's a rise of a lot of terrible things right now, but I think the majority of people aren't that. So we need to stand together, we need to come together, and we need to, fight together.
Well, I think the people in the roundhouse queue can definitely help, because they're all involved on the comments right now. Thank you, guys. Let's do a quick fire. I want to talk about Ellen Page's Activism #5 inspiration, but I think we should just go straight to asking some questions from fans, because that's why we're here. Natalie Rose McMurray says, well, this isn't really much of a question, more of a statement. You were the first lesbians I ever knew about growing up in a rural area, and it helped me cope in high school.
That's awesome.
Hamelia Girard, I hope I said that right, said, I just came out to my grandma for the second time because we were listening to I Was Married. The second time? The first time maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, grandmas, sometimes it takes twice.
You do have to come out more than once sometimes.
That's true. Yeah. And
that's good, though. That's awesome that you did that. That's huge.
Major. And Rachel Tay says, how are Holiday and Mickey the cats?
Holiday
On to more important things.
Holiday and Mickey are great. The Holiday and Mickey Foundation is just going fantastically.
Excellent. Maybe I feel like we shouldn't end on the cats, although they are great. Octavian Starr says, do you have a message for young LGBT people? I work with LGBT people, youth experiencing homelessness, and it's always nice for them to hear from folks like you.
Do you know, it's interesting because I think, for us, we take such comfort in our community. Like, I love that we have a history, and we have heroes, and we have leaders, and we have adversity, but we've also had these wonderful successes. Like, the thing I try to share with any LGBTQ kids who are struggling is we're here. Like, we love this community. We love that people are involved in this community. We love that we have each other. And to me, that there's a hopefulness in that. When I look at opportunities, though, I think, like, Tegan and I make people so uncomfortable. I love to push myself into areas where I see lack of representation, and I like to look into the eyes of the people who are sort of, like, not putting that together and say, do you look around right now? Do you see any other queer people here? Do you see any other people of color here? Do you see enough women represented here? Mm-hmm. Like, I love making people uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that our community always has to be the ones doing it, but, like, I want people to know that that is my life goal, is to continue to make people uncomfortable and accountable for lack of representation, whatever it is, gay or not. Like, I want to see more diversity in our workplace.
Yeah, and so when it comes to advice to young LGBTQ people, I mean, part of it is just, you know, find a community and thrive within that community. You know, I think a lot of people isolate themselves, and we've seen firsthand that oftentimes when some of our younger LGBTQ fans are feeling isolated and down, it benefits them to find their community. You know, there's strength in numbers, and there are a lot of us, and you can find each other, whether it's online, and that's another thing that we're really working on at some of our long-term goals, is trying to bring together a universal, like, world community of LGBTQ people to be there and support one another, a network, you know. And I would say that my advice to people, LGBTQ people who are out there who aren't struggling, like, that there are a lot of us who aren't struggling as much, but there are a lot of people in the community still struggling. And so I hope that you can find time, even if it's just an hour a day, to look for ways or initiatives to help other people in our community who are struggling. Don't forget that there are people still in our community struggling. Marriage equality is not the end of the fight for LGBTQ people, and specifically transgender people and people of color in our community. They are very marginalized, and there is still an enormous inequity happening, and so it helps to, sometimes it makes me feel good to do something good. So anyone struggling out there, it's like, get involved. That's another way to make yourself feel empowered.
And how can people get involved with the foundation? Is it teganandsarafoundation.com?
Exactly. It's a .org.
Right.
Yeah.
.org.
Yeah. .org. And we're excited. In the next couple of months, we're going to start rolling out our initial programs. Right now, though, I will say that one of the first things we really want to do is start, as Tegan was saying, amplifying and giving visibility to the organizations that are out there that are already doing great work. There are literally organizations in every city that we go to, the smallest ones to the biggest ones, that are doing amazing work. If you want to get involved, the work is already being done, and people can get out and get active.
Right, I'm feeling galvanized.
Do you feel galvanized? Okay,
let's go volunteer.
Yeah, let's do it. So Tegan and Sara on UK Tour, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, you guys. Thanks for all your questions we did not answer.
Sorry about that. We'll be back on Thursday with Frank Carter from the Rattlesnakes.